Chapter 12. Emma looked up in surprise when William entered. He hadn't seemed the church-going type, and even though Jenny had said she had convinced him to come, Emma still hadn't believed it would happen. Plus, he was still healing. "Good morning."
"Morning," he said. "I guess I'm attending church with you, if that's all right."
"Of course. Everyone is welcome in the house of the Lord. Would you like some breakfast? Carrie made some eggs and bacon."
"Sure, and I'll take some coffee if you have some."
Emma smiled as she loaded up a plate for him. "I'm not much of a partaker myself, but Samuel brews some every morning before feeding the animals." They didn't have a large farm, but a few chickens to supply their eggs, some hogs for ham, and of course, horses. "There should be some left," she said, nodding at the carafe on the stove.
"I'll have some then. Is that where your siblings are now?"
William asked, looking around the room as he pulled out a chair and sat at the table. Emma placed the plate in front of him before returning to the stove. "Yes, Samuel and Benjamin are finishing up their chores, and Carrie is getting ready in our room." She poured the black liquid into a cup. "Do you take milk or sugar?"
"A dash of milk would be fine," William said.
Emma added it and returned to the table, placing the steaming cup in front of William.
"Thank you,"
he said, catching her eye. He held her gaze a moment longer than necessary, and Emma felt her cheeks begin to burn. "That was nice of you to agree to attend church for Jenny's sake," she said, turning away to hide the effect he was having on her.
"Did she tell you why?"
he asked as he lifted the cup to his lips. Emma shook her head. "No, she simply said you agreed to come." William's eyebrow arched on his head as if he didn't believe her. "She may be only 6, but she had to grow up quickly when she learned about Ma. In some ways, she's a lot older than she seems." William opened his mouth to respond, but before he could, the two boys clomped into the house.
"The animals are fed," Benjamin said.
"No thanks to you," Samuel said, shooting his brother a look.
"He almost fell in the mud trying to feed the hogs before I was ready."
"But I didn't." Benjamin pulled back his shoulders and puffed out his little chest. "All right, boys," Emma said. "Enough arguing. Clean up. We'll be heading to church in a minute." The next few minutes were a flurry of activity as Carrie and Jenny emerged from the girls' room. Emma put the left-out dishes in the sink to be washed upon their return, and the boys reappeared with combed hair and clean shirts. "Okay, let's go." Emma ushered the crew outside. "Don't get dirty," she shouted to Jenny and Benjamin as they raced ahead.
"What kind of preacher is Pastor Lewis?"
William asked, falling into step beside Emma. His face appeared pinched and anxious. She glanced at him, wondering what the meaning behind the question really was. "He's young, but seems very knowledgeable. He speaks often on the love of God and having a true relationship with Him. I think you'll like him."
"Oh, good."
His posture relaxed visibly.
"I was afraid he might be one of those fire and brimstone types, and I wasn't sure I could handle it."
Emma laughed. "No, we haven't had one like that in a long time, and I'm glad. I think having a relationship with God is more important than trying to scare people into believing." They arrived at the church and joined the other townspeople filing in. Emma waved at Sarah Miller as she sat next to Kate and Deputy Jennings. She caught the eye of a few of the other women in the town as she walked up the row to her family's pew. Unfortunately, she also managed to catch the eye of Carl, who glared at her when he caught sight of William behind her. Emma sighed softly. Would she never convince him he held no claim on her? Emma sat down with Jenny on her left and William on her right. She wasn't sure who was the bigger wiggler. Jenny had the normal 6-year-old wiggles, but William kept shifting in his seat, crossing and then uncrossing his leg, leaning forward and then leaning back. At least he finally seemed to relax when Pastor Lewis started speaking.
I came this morning with a message prepared, Pastor Lewis began, but I feel God telling me that someone here needs a different message, maybe many of you, so I hope you'll bear with me as I let God lead this message where He wants it to go.
He paused for a moment, as if gathering his thoughts.
I had someone ask me this week, he continued, if heaven was as beautiful as you could imagine, if there was no sickness or physical ailments there, if you could rest and be reunited with loved ones, would you want to go?
Of course, Emma thought to herself. That is the point of heaven, isn't it?
What if you could have all those things, but Jesus wasn't there? Pastor Lewis continued. What if you had to choose? You could have the perfect place of heaven, or you could follow Jesus. Would you still choose Jesus?
A feeling of conviction settled on Emma. Though she knew the Bible said you got both, she had to wonder if she would choose Jesus if forced to make a choice. Heaven to her had always meant seeing her mother again, and recently seeing Joseph again, while Jesus had been the byproduct. Now she realized she had her priorities backwards. She ought to be looking forward to seeing Jesus in heaven, and everything else should be a byproduct.
I know you all love Jesus, Pastor Lewis continued, or you probably wouldn't be here. But do you love Jesus for who He is, or do you love Him for what you hope He will grant you? Are you tithing because God said we should, or because you hope by tithing that God will increase your wealth? We all have moments of selfishness, just like James and John did in Mark chapter 10, when they asked to sit at Jesus' right and left hands. But we must work through those moments and keep our vision on God. I have no doubt that when we get to heaven, it will be beautiful and amazing and pain-free. But I don't believe that will be because it's heaven. I believe it will be that way because God will be there, and we will stand in awe of Him and wonder how we could have second-guessed Him or put our faith in anything but Him.
Though Pastor Lewis continued the sermon, Emma heard very little of it. Her mind was focused on the initial words and how she could change her heart and mindset to put Jesus first in her life. Before she knew it, the service was over, and Jenny was tapping her arm. "It's over," she said. "Oh, so it is," Emma said. "Did you enjoy the message, William?"
I did, he said, meeting her eyes. I felt like he was speaking directly to me.
"That's funny." Emma smiled back softly. "I felt the same way." The surrounding sounds seemed to diminish as he returned her smile. He had a nice smile, though his lips were a little crooked. She wanted to reach out and touch them, those thin, crooked lips. "Can we go now?" Jenny whined. "I'm getting hungry." "Of course." Emma shook her head to clear the thought of William's lips away. She had no business thinking about him or his lips. "Let's go home and fill that empty tummy of yours." She tickled Jenny, earning a shrill giggle in return, before the girl raced out of the pew ahead of them. "Look, Emma, Pa's back!" The young girl pointed toward the back of the church before sprinting off to hug her father. Relief flooded Emma that her father was okay, followed quickly by a sense of sadness. She glanced at William beside her. With her father back and William healing as quickly as he had, her father was sure to discharge him, and then William would be on his way, back to hunting outlaws and out of her life. She found she didn't want him to go. Though she believed she would never love another man the way she had loved Joseph, she could not deny there was some attraction building with William. She wanted him to stay, so she could learn more about him. William's eyes met hers. Was she mistaken, or was the same disappointment etched in his gaze? Could it be that he felt something for her as well? Emma hadn't felt anything for a man since Joseph's death, and now she was developing feelings for the one man who wouldn't stick around. Pastor Lewis's words echoed again in her head. God had a plan they couldn't always see.
"Well, it's nice to see you up and about.
her father said as they reached him.
"I assume Emma has taken good care of you." "Indeed she has."
William shot a look in Emma's direction that heated her cheeks again. "Oh, except I haven't changed the dressing today," Emma said, her hand flying to her mouth. William appeared to be recovering so well she had almost forgotten it needed to be done. "I can do it as soon as we get home."
"No need," her father waved his hand. "I'll do a quick examination after lunch just to make sure everything is healing as it should be, and I can change the bandage then."
A strange surge of disappointment filled Emma, and she realized she had enjoyed changing his bandage, as it gave her a reason to be close and touch him. What was wrong with her? Why hadn't she guarded her heart better?
"That will be fine,"
William said with a nod, and he and Emma followed the rest of their family outside and back to the house. While her father examined William, Emma helped Carrie with the roast and vegetables for lunch. "Will you pay attention?" Carrie shook her head as she took the knife from Emma. "You very nearly cut off your finger. What's wrong with you?" "Do you think he'll leave right away?" Emma asked. "What are you talking about?" Carrie asked as she finished chopping up the potatoes. "Pa just got back. Why would he leave again right away?" "Not Pa," Emma said with a sigh. Carrie stopped chopping and stared at her. Her eyes grew round as she understood Emma's hint. "Oh, William? Why? Are you developing feelings for him?" "I don't know," Emma said, frustrated. "I've only known the man for 3 days, so I shouldn't be developing feelings for him, right? You had only known Joseph for a week when you were sure he was the one," Carrie pointed out as she dropped the vegetables in the boiling water. Emma thought back and realized Carrie was right. "But William is different. He's not the type to stay in one place." "Have you asked him?" Carrie pointed the wooden spoon in her hand at Emma. "Maybe he took the bounty hunter job because he had nothing keeping him in one place, and maybe he would stay if he had something or someone worth staying for." Emma bit her lip as she thought about Carrie's words. Could her sister be right? Could William stay in one place and be happy? Did she even have anything to offer him?